Committee will come to order.
We're going to do this at the end. Go straight into that.
Okay. The committee's first agenda item today is H.R. 4098, the Secure Federal File Sharing Act. This bill directs the Office of Management and Budget to issue new guidance to prohibit the use of open network peer-to-peer file sharing software on all federal computers, systems, and networks, including those of contractors working on the government's behalf. Peer-to-peer file sharing software allows users to instantly connect with each other to search the copies, electronic files, most commonly music and movies. The committee first sounded the alarm of the dangers of this type of software 9 years ago. With more than 20 million users online at any given moment, the security and privacy risks associated with the use of peer-to-peer software have skyrocketed since then. We all saw firsthand the kind of highly sensitive information that is available in peer-to-peer network at our hearing in July. I'm sure none of my colleagues can forget the compelling presentation where it was revealed that the location of the Secret Service safe house for the First Family, financial information belonging to the Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, and thousands of medical records and tax filings were all available online, on open peer-to-peer networks. H.R. 4098 would help prevent the inadvertent sharing of those kinds of federal documents to peer-to-peer networks. What's more, because there are ways to use peer-to-peer file sharing software safely and legally that may prove beneficial to the federal government. This bill also directs OMB to set up a procedure for agencies to seek approval of specific software for legitimate government purposes. Under this legislation, OMB must then report annually to Congress on those peer-to-peer programs that have been approved, the agencies that are using them, and for what purposes. It is clear that peer-to-peer file sharing is a technology with great potential. The challenge is in harnessing that potential without putting our sensitive information and data at greater risk. H.R. 4098 seeks to do just that. I want to take the time to acknowledge my colleague from Vermont, Mr. Welch, who has been especially helpful during the committee's investigation of peer-to-peer and an early support of H.R. 4098. This is a good bill, and I strongly urge the rest of my colleagues to join me in supporting it. I now yield to the ranking member of the committee, Congressman Issa from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past several years, this committee has undertaken on a bipartisan way and a technically accurate way to detail the explanation of peer-to-peer file sharing and its risk. For many years, this sensitive personal information and classified information has leaked out of the federal agencies. Because we as Americans are about to deliver a huge amount of personal information as a result of the census, and because on a daily basis the IRS and other agencies collect information that we would otherwise never provide to outsiders, it is crucial that the highest level of confidence be in the federal government. Only recently we discovered that, that people were surfing from the IRS and other organizations sites that in fact could be infected. This is a threat that we fight every day. This is a threat that we will continue to look into as a committee. However, deliberately placing peer-to-peer file sharing software onto computers in order to exchange games, pictures, videos, and the like is in fact an overt act which can be prevented by this legislation. So I join with the chairman in urging that we quickly move this bill, that we get it to the floor, that we get it through the Senate, and that we make it law. There was much more work to be done. As I said, we're going to have to work on other areas that have led to risk and lack of confidence by the American people. But this loophole can be filled quickly by this legislation. Mr. Chairman, again, I'd like to thank you for making this a priority of this Congress and moving it quickly, and I yield back.
I'd like to thank the gentleman for his kind words. At this time, do any other members seek recognition? no other members seek recognition, I now call up H.R. 4098.
H.R. 4098, a bill to require the Director of the Office of Management and Budget to issue guidance on the use of peer-to-peer file sharing software to...
I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. Are there any amendments? Hearing no amendments, I move that the bill H.R. 4098 be reported favorably to the House. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposes? No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and H.R. 4098 is ordered reported. Now we call up H.R. 946, the Plain Language Act of 2009. The Plain Language Act, H.R. 946, was introduced by Representative Bruce Brawley. Mr. Brawley had a similar bill last Congress, H.R. 3548. That bill was approved by this committee on a voice vote and passed the House by a vote of 376 to 1. This is a good time to consider this legislation. In just 2 weeks, we will celebrate Sunshine Week, when we will focus on the importance of open government. H.R. 946 will make the federal government more open and accessible by requiring government documents to be written in plain language. The bill defines plain language as writing that is clear, concise, and well organized. Requiring government documents to be written clearly will make it easier for Americans to communicate with their government, and it will make the federal government more accountable. President Clinton issued a memo in 1998 directing agencies to write documents in plain language. 12 years have passed since that memo was issued, and I think we can all agree that it is time for agencies to take this issue seriously. At the appropriate time, I will offer an amendment that makes some changes to the bill, including a suggestion by Mr. Issa from California on the type of documents that are covered by this. I urge the members of the committee to support this good government legislation, and I now recognize the gentleman from California, the ranking member, Congressman Issa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the fact that this bipartisan bill is up again and, in fact, this time has a high opportunity to become law. I would only anecdotally say that once this becomes law, once we, in fact, have taken a big step toward making it easier for the Americans to understand correspondence they receive from the government, I hope we will do the same thing with the language of bills that we write here in the Congress. And with that, I yield back.
Do any other members seek recognition? If no other members wish to speak, I now call up H.R. 946, the Plain Language Act of 2009.
H.R. 946, a bill to enhance citizen access to government information and services by establishing that government documents issued to the public must be written clearly and for other purposes.
I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered as read and open for amendments at any point. Without objection, so ordered. I have a manager's amendment at the desk, and will the clerk will designate the amendment?
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 946 offered by Mr. Towns.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I ask unanimous consent that the amendment be considered as original text. My amendment ensures that agencies target their resources on the documents most in need of attention. The amendment requires agencies to use plain writing in documents that deal with the federal benefits of services. This will include the form the veterans most fill out to obtain a VA home loan and the instructions for obtaining coverage under the Medicare prescription drug program. My amendment requires the IRS to write tax documents in plain writing, and it includes a provision suggested by Mr. Issa to require agencies to write documents that explain how to comply with the requirement that is administered or enforced by the federal government in plain writing. My amendment requires the Office of Management and Budget to issue guidance to agencies with 6 months agency are required to perform a number of actions. including training employees to use plain writing and disclosing the agency's compliance with this legislation on the agency's website. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Ranking Member Congressman Issa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I support the manager's amendment, particularly because it does, although it narrows the scope, it focuses it on that which interfaces and is most important with the public. I would support passage and yield back the balance of my time.
Any other members seek recognition? If no other members wish to speak on the amendment, the question is on adopting the town's amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Hearing none, I move that the bill H.R. 946 as amended be reported favorably to the House. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposes? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and H.R. 946 as amended is ordered reported. The next bill is H.R. 4621, the Prevent Deceptive Census Look-alike Mailing Act. The committee will now consider H.R. 4621, the Prevent Deceptive Census Look-alike Mailing Act. The bill was introduced by Representative Carolyn Maloney of New York and Congressman Clay of Missouri and myself. H.R. 4621 would require certain mailings which have the term census on the outside of the envelope to also include an accurate return address and the name of the sender on the envelope. H.R. 4621 would also mandate that such mailings follow existing legal requirements to include disclaimers, making it clear that the mailing is not from the federal government. In recent months, mailings which had the word census on the envelope and contents that resemble official census forms have been sent by certain political and nonprofit organizations to citizens in several states. Many of these mailings are marked "Do Not Destroy Official Document." The envelope used in these mailings did not include a return address or identify the sender. Using these terms on the outside of the envelope without a return address and the name of the sender creates an appearance of an official government document. Later this month, the Census Bureau will begin conducting the census through the United States mail. Mailing by private organizations which appear to be from the Census Bureau without a proper clarification or disclaimer create a risk of confusion on the part of the citizens who will be receiving actual census mailing this year. H.R. 4621 will help to prevent such confusion. I urge members to support this bill, and I yield to the ranking member for his comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney, for bringing this bill in a timely fashion. It's very clear that it is irresistible every 10 years for the direct mail industry, fundraising industry of both political and nonprofits, to see this as a way to get an envelope opened, a way to, in fact, have a higher level of looking at your request, whether for charity or for political purposes. And nothing could be more wrong. This has been a common practice. It has occurred every 10 years, and it is time that it stop. I believe that only by us working on a bipartisan basis to make it very clear that our postal inspectors have not just a right to question this, but an obligation to question and remove deceptive or potentially deceptive advertisements or solicitations, because, as the chairman said, this clearly could lead to a lower census count. If people receive, prior to the census, these envelopes and then discover that they are not the census, it is so easy for them simply to take the actual census forms and throw them away or set them aside. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you and the gentlelady from New York for bringing this in timely fashion. I fully support it. I look forward to its passage and yield back.
Any other members seeking recognition? Recognize the gentlewoman from New York, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who's the sponsor of the bill.
Thank you so much. First of all, Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this bill to markup, and thank you to Ranking Member Issa for your cooperation and your comments and support. I also would like to thank Mr. Shavitz for co-sponsoring and working with me, as well as Mr. Clay and Mr. Lynch for their assistance and their support. As the 2010 census quickly approaches, with 2010 forms hitting mailboxes on March 12th, we must act to ensure a fair and accurate count without disruption or confusion. Many may not realize that the constitutionally mandated census is used to determine the distribution of billions of dollars in federal funding into our states and communities, in addition to determining the number of congressional House seats per state. Participation in the census is essential to ensuring a brighter tomorrow for our communities and a representative government in Congress. It is because of this we must do everything possible to protect the integrity of the United States Census and ensure that it is both accurate and cost-effective. And while the Congress has appropriated hundreds of millions of dollars to the Census Bureau to encourage participation, unfortunately, while the government is working to encourage participation, there are organizations that are causing confusion by sending mailers that resemble official census documents. These deceptive mailings include the words census document and official document, but are instead letters seeking support for other purposes. If we allow organizations or individuals to send mock census documents or lookalikes, we stand to confuse people and risk a lower response rate, which ultimately would increase the cost of the entire count. In fact, every percentage decrease in the mail response rate costs approximately $25 million for the additional expense of sending enumerators to the homes of those who do not respond to the mailings. After all, when people simply fill out the form and mail it back, it costs the least for government. Former Census Director Dr. Barbara Bryant, who served under former President George H.W. Bush, has noted that there are documents that are intentionally made to look like the census in an effort to deceive. This is why I introduced H.R. 4621, the Prevent Deceptive Census Lookalike Mailings Act, and why I'm grateful that the leadership of this committee is moving so quickly to pass the bill. H.R. 4621 would require any mailing with an envelope marked census to clearly indicate the sender and the return address. It would also trigger an existing requirement in federal law to include a disclaimer that the mailing is not from or affiliated with the federal government. The bill would not prohibit the use of the word census on a mailing. If an organization wants to do a census and call it that, that's fine. However, the mailer must be clear that it is not the United States Census. This bill will serve as an important tool in protecting the integrity of census mailings and save the taxpayers money in fulfilling the constitutionally mandated census by limiting any confusion that a deceptive lookalike mailer could cause. I would like to note that Senator Carper has indicated that if the House votes on the bill and sends it over, he will move the bill quickly to the Senate floor. Chairman Towns, Chairman Issa, Clay, and Lynch, once again, I thank you and your staff for your swift response to this problem and urge my colleagues to report this bill out of committee. Thank you. I yield back.
I'd like to thank the gentlewoman from New York for her comments. I now yield to the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Congresswoman Maloney for bringing up this important piece of legislation. I concur with the comments that have been made thus far, and I applaud her for bringing this up. I've asked recently to be joined on as a co-sponsor. I think this is an important piece of legislation that we gain the confidence of the American people for what they're doing. And this census, done every 10 years, is vital and critical and constitutional in our role of government. I have seen mailers out there that I believe have been deceptive. I am obviously a member of the Republican Party. I have seen the Republican Party send out documents that say census. I think it's wrong. I think it's deceptive, and I wish they wouldn't do it. And I would hope that our party would cease from doing that. But it's bigger and broader than that. And this piece of legislation, I think, would send the right signal. It would provide some enforcement mechanisms, and therefore, I'm proud to co-sponsor this and support it and urge my colleagues to do the same. Yield back the balance of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to thank the gentleman from Utah for his comments, and of course, any other members seeking recognition? If no other members wish to speak, I now call up H.R. 4621. Gentleman from...
Yeah, I do. I got here a little late. I just want to ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, in connection with H.R. 4098 to submit a statement for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I want to thank you. My colleague from California, the ranking member, indicated you said some nice things about me, and I'm not going to ask unanimous consent for you to say them again, but I appreciate it.
I hope you recorded it.
Thank you.
H.R. 4621, a bill to protect the integrity of the constitutionally mandated United States Census and prohibit deceptive mail practices that attempt to exploit the decennial census.
I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered as read and open for amendments at any point. Without objection, so ordered. I have a manager's amendment at the desk.
Amendment to H.R. 4621, offered by Mr. Towns of New York. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following. Section 1.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I ask unanimous consent that the amendment be considered as original text. My amendment is a purely technical amendment, which is designed to conform this bill to the drafting style entitled 39. The substance and language of the underlying bill is unchanged by this amendment. I recognize the ranking member for, at this particular time, for any comments that he might have.
Support for the amendment and yield back.
Do any other members seek recognition? If no other members wish to speak on the amendment, the question is on adopting the Towns amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposes no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments?
Question is on the bill as amended.
Are there any other amendments? Hearing none, I move that the bill H.R. 4621 as amended be reported favorably to the House. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and H.R. 4621 as amended is ordered reported. H.R. 572, the Contracting and Tax Accountability Act. The committee will now consider H.R. 572, a bill to prohibit the award of federal contracts to contractors that do not pay their federal taxes. The bill was introduced by Representative Ellsworth and Towns. The committee considered an identical bill, H.R. 4881, last year and approved the bill by voice vote. The House then passed the bill by voice vote on April 14, 2008. The Government Accountability Office reported that government contractors owed over $5 billion in unpaid federal taxes in 2004 and 2005. These contractors typically do not pay their payroll and corporate income taxes, which includes amount withheld from employee wages. This is effectively taking the taxes the workers have paid in good faith and keeping it. Furthermore, many of these contractors are repeat offenders, failing to pay their taxes repeatedly over many years. H.R. 572 is designed to allow the government to ensure that businesses have paid their taxes before receiving a contract. H.R. 572 builds on a revision to the Federal Acquisition Regulation made in 2008, requiring contractors to certify that they do not have a delinquent tax debt to the federal government by providing the means to verify the contractor's claim. H.R. 572 will encourage contractors who want to do business with the federal government to comply with the nation's tax laws, just like every other citizen has to do. This legislation will also ensure responsible contractors have a fair opportunity to win contracts. I urge my members to support this bill, and I yield to the ranking member of this committee, the Congressman from California, Congressman Issa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although we will be offering amendments to this bill, it is only to make it technically more accurate and more enforceable. We support this. We support the President's January 20th, 2010 executive order or memo that required agencies to do substantially the same thing we're doing here today. It's very clear that a good vendor is a vendor who pays all of their bills in a timely fashion. The federal government does not chintz when it contracts. If anything, we often pay too much for what we get. There is no excuse whatsoever for us to use anything other than first-class vendors who provide goods and services in a timely fashion and pay all of their bills, particularly those related to their employees, properly. We, in fact, must hold our vendors to the high standard. We must hold ourselves to a high standard because, in fact, the money we are taking 40% greater than the amount of money that we take in from the American people. In fact, we are borrowing to do our spending. So, Mr. Chairman, I think this is clearly overdue in coming and being codified in law so that there is no question but that for this and other reasons, if a vendor cannot or will not pay their taxes in a timely fashion, they can be held not eligible for contracting. I would like to add one thing, though. We have put between the body of the text and the amendment some limited exemptions. If someone is still appealing, if someone in fact is making payments as agreed, voluntary payments as agreed, we do not eliminate their ability to receive the very contracts that might allow them to play catch-up. So this is not intended to be punitive against those who for some reason have had a dispute with the IRS or other agencies, but it is very clear that those who simply ignore paying their taxes should not be allowed to continue in the federal system. And with that, I urge support for the underlying bill and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, gentleman from California. Any other members seeking recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
We were taking the amendments. Yes, we do. We will. I understand there's several amendments, so we'll take them. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if amendments are in order, I have an amendment at the desk.
I understand we have several, as indicated, several amendments. Now, I recognize the minority ranking member, Mr. Issa, to offer an amendment. You recognize at this particular time to offer your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Amendment to H.R. 572, offered by Mr. Issa of California. Page 5, after line 10, insert the following. A, debarment. 1, unless...
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize the ranking member of the committee for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I said in my opening statement, I want to make sure that we get this exactly right, as we can do well beyond the powers of one administration or another. And although I was very supportive in the last Congress, I believe time has given us an opportunity to make some technical changes. This bill prohibits contractors who are seriously delinquent in their taxes from receiving government contracts. Similarly, it prohibits grantees that are seriously delinquent on their taxes from receiving grants. The bill goes a step further by requiring the awarding agency to propose disbarment of a contractor that is seriously delinquent in their taxes. It does not have a similar provision for disbarment of a grantee. I certainly believe that under any basis, if tax dollars are flowing to someone who is not paying their taxes, this should lead to disbarment, and that's why I've made what I believe is mostly a technical correction in this amendment, and would urge its support and yield back.
I appreciate the ranking member's efforts in this area. It is a reasonable amendment, and I am prepared to support it. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present this amendment. I want to commend Mr. Ellsworth for introducing this accountability measure.
Yeah, hold on, madam. Hold on just a moment. Let me just finish with the gentleman's amendment from California. Yeah.
I move the previous question, Mr. Chairman.
If no other members wish to speak on the amendment, the question is on adopting the ICE amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Now, I recognize the gentlewoman from California.
I have an amendment at the desk, Mr. Chairman.